Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and I'm here today at the VHU, the Military History Institute in Prague in the Czech Republic. We're taking a look at some of the really cool prototype Czech rifles in their reserve collection. Today we have this ZK381. Now, once again, we're going to go back to our Czech weapons designations. Z means it's a small arm. K means it was developed by a guy with a K last name. In this case, it is Josef Koucký. And then 381 means it is his first design of 1938. So this is one of the last of the Czech pre-war semi-automatic rifle developments. And let me tell you, the Czech companies and factories were pretty prolific in this stuff. There were a couple of designers and pairs of designer brothers who were cranking out a whole lot of interesting semi-auto rifle designs. This is one of them. By the way, this was manufactured by a company called Česká Žebrovka of Brno. The name changed in 1940 with German occupation to just Žebrovka Brno. But at this time, the company had two of the major designers working for it. They had the Koucký brothers, who were working out of an R&D facility in Prague, and they had the Holek brothers, who were working out of Brno itself. Holek being responsible, the Holek brothers between them, being responsible for such very respectable Czech designs as the ZB-26 light machine gun and the ZH-29 rifles. Anyway, this development dates to 1938. It is a tilting bolt, semi-auto, gas piston operated rifle chambered for 8mm Mauser, although these could generally be chambered for whatever specific cartridge a country was looking for. This is something that was being very much offered on the commercial export market, as were most of these Czech semi-auto rifles. They, like, from the late 1920s through the late 1930s, the Czech designers came up with all sorts of interesting designs that were tested around the world by all the major military powers at the time, and they were just never quite at the right place at the right time with the right price and the right gun to get something adopted. But this one was tested actually first, interestingly, by the Russians in the spring of 1938. The Russians first tested the version in 8mm Mauser, and they liked it enough that they essentially gave the armory, they gave the company 30,000 rounds of 7.62 by 54 rimmed ammunition and asked them to make a version in that caliber for Russian military testing. That was done. The company provided two guns in 54 rimmed. Those were subsequently tested in Russia in November of 1938. Although I don't have any data on the actual results of those testing. But the company went on in 1939 to show the rifle around Western Europe. It was tested by the French, by the Germans, by the Italians, by the Spanish. And again, unfortunately, I don't have any of the results of this testing, but it is a beautiful rifle, and I can only assume it had to be reasonably effective in trials. But again, very close to the beginning of the war, countries are interested in semi-auto rifles, but they're often interested in developing them domestically, or they're interested only if they can get them cheap. Remember, basically in fact, all of these countries would go into World War I using primarily bolt-action rifles because they just didn't have they didn't put the importance and the budgetary priorities on a semi-auto rifle. So let's take a closer look. Let me show you how this one works, because it has a couple of really neat features to it, like the hammer being powered by the mainspring. Fundamentally, what we have here is a detachable box magazine fed rifle, gas piston operated, uses a tilting bolt. As I mentioned, manufactured by, well, in this case, it's marked Žebrovka Brno AS. AS means basically private company. We don't know exactly when this example was manufactured, but from this naming convention, we know it was after December of 1940, because that's when the company name changed to get rid of the reference to Czechoslovakia in it. On the top of the receiver, we have the model designation ZK381, caliber 7.92, so that's the 7.92 Mauser cartridge. That was the standard Czech military cartridge, and it was probably singularly the most popular military rifle cartridge around the world. And then we have the serial number, which in this case is 26. By today's standards, this is a pretty long and heavy rifle. It has about a 20.5-inch barrel plus this flash hider threaded on the end. and it weighs in at about 9.5 pounds. By the standards of the 1930s, though, that length is pretty normal, and that weight is pretty good, especially for a semi-automatic rifle. That's not that much different than the M1 Garand. Like most of the Czech semi-auto rifles, this uses the same magazine as the ZB26 light machine gun, just a 10-round version instead of the 20-round machine gun mags. These are excellent magazines, and it totally makes sense that all the different Czech designs would continue to use them. So 10 rounds, double stack, double feed. The front sight is again a fairly typical military style for the period. It's a big triangular barleycorn, a couple of protective wings on it. This one is shifted a bit over to the left. Someone at some point in the past zeroed it that way. And then we have a very standard military style leaf rear sight graduated out to 1400 meters. And that is a V-notch rear sight. You can see it there. It's a very tiny little rear notch. I would probably want to open that up a bit myself. There is a manual safety here, although on this example it's not marked in any way. It's this push button. So that's the fire position, that's the safe position, and in the safe position it just disconnects the trigger from doing anything. Now, one of the cool features here, the bolt locks open when the magazine is empty or if there's no magazine in the gun at all. And you may notice there's no bolt release lever on here, nor is there a bolt hold open lever. There's no way to manually lock it open. Once it is locked open, the bolt release is actually the trigger itself. So I've got this in the safe position right now, so it won't fire, but I can use the trigger as a bolt release. So if I pull the trigger, that drops down, then the trigger's disconnected. If I put it into the fire position, it will fire the second time I pull the trigger. And of course, if it's in the fire position, the trigger still works as a bolt release on the first pull, and then it fires on the second pull. If I keep pulling the trigger, you can hear the disconnector clicking in there. Now for disassembly, we're going to push out this pin. It is a captive pin, which is nice, and it just opens up rather easily. We have a tail on the bolt carrier here. Tell you what, to make this easier, we're going to pop the front pin as well. This has an upper and a lower receiver to it. So pull that one out. We can take off the whole lower assembly. This little conical depression is where the tail from the bolt carrier sits. The recoil spring is located down inside the stock, and it is accessible right there. So it's a handy way to protect the recoil spring, to keep gunk from getting into it, and just to keep the inside of the action simple and clean and easy to access. Looking in here, you can see we have this latch right there. That is the bolt release. So every time you pull the trigger, actually, it drops this, which will release the bolt if it's locked back. Then you also have this sear. So you can see that drop down when I pull the trigger. If I pull the trigger all the way back, there we go, it's going to disconnect. It's because it's semi-auto only. Now, this is a sear. It releases the hammer. The hammer itself is actually up here. So let's pull the bolt carrier out. That is the hammer. And when this is in position, the tail's back here being pushed on by the recoil spring. This is being held by this sear surface right there. When that sear drops, it drops out of the way of this hammer, and the recoil spring pushes that forward. That's the locked position of the bolt. You can see the firing pin right there, and this hammer is going to hit the firing pin, cause it to protrude out the front of the bolt, like that, and fire the rifle. So pretty cool. There's it's a hammer-fired rifle, which is relatively unusual, and it's built right into the bolt carrier using the same spring that they've already got powering everything else. In terms of locking, this looks quite a lot like the other, well, the ZB26 machine gun in particular. The ZH29 has a locking system like this, but working horizontally. This is a vertically tilting bolt. So we've got a hook up there in the bolt carrier. when this is the locked position with it dropped down, when the rifle fires, the gas piston is going to push here, which pushes the bolt carrier back. The hook in the top, right there, is going to force the bolt to lift upward out of engagement with the locking surface, until it's like that, and then it'll cycle backward. That locking surface is right there above my finger. You can see it right here. It is a separate piece because it needs to have a different heat treat than the rest of the receiver, and it is removable. So if you have headspace issues, you can swap out the locking block to fix them. Both that and the hidden recoil spring in the buttstock are features that would also be used by the Belgians in the FAL a few years later. Now, the gas piston is also pretty cool. I can show you that. We've got a clamp here that holds the handguard on. I'm going to use a dummy cartridge to pop that up. Then we lift it up like that. Then I can lift up the wooden handguard. That comes out. And if this gas piston weren't Czech, it would have to be Swiss. So, most countries, most designers use a couple pieces of basic plain round rod for their gas pistons. Koucký here has all sorts of fancy bits. So when this fires, of course, you have gas coming up through this gas block. And by the way, the gas piston is removable, or the gas plug is removable. There we go. There's the gas plug with, where is it? There's the gas port inside it. That's going to vent gas up through the barrel into the gas block here, where it pushes this piston backwards. That piston comes through the front of the receiver right there, and it hits this stub on the bolt carrier, and you can actually see an outline of it imprinted there. To take the gas piston out, we're going to lift that up, then slide it rearward. That comes out, and we can slide the whole thing out as one piece. Normally, this sort of gas piston is like 3 separate pieces that you take apart. Well, this is 2 pieces and a spring, but it doesn't have to be disassembled in order to remove it. There's the front, and that is the gas piston action. This just acts as an over-travel stop to prevent it from going too far. And there you go. There is the ZK381 prototype semi-auto, very cool rifle, all field stripped for you. So after the ZK381 was shown across Europe in 1939, it failed to garner any major contracts, and it must have failed to look like it would ever actually garner any military contracts, because the company and Josef Koucký went on to develop yet another substantially different design as the ZK391. That one actually substantively based on the M1 Garand. So all sorts of interesting different designs coming out of the company. They're all beautiful guns like this one, and it is a deep well of cool small arms development to take a look at. So hopefully you guys enjoyed checking out this one. I'd like to give a big thanks to the VHU for giving me access to it to film for you. If you are ever here in Prague, you should definitely set aside like a half day or more to go through the Army Museum in Prague. It's part of the VHU institution. It's got some fantastic exhibits, including a whole wall of interesting Czech small arms developmental guns that are definitely worth taking a look at. Thanks for watching.